Fitzpatrick to the Bears. The move that changes everything in Chicago. The Bears' safety room is on fire right now. Minkah Fitzpatrick, a 5-time Pro Bowler, could be on the way and flip everything upside down. But that is nothing compared to what might be coming next. Devon Achane, the most explosive running back in the NFL, could be packing up for Chicago. And to top it off, a former Packer everyone in this fan base knows very well might be suiting up in navy and orange. 3 stories that could shake Chi-Town to its core. Hit that subscribe button now so you do not miss a thing. Minkah Fitzpatrick. There is something going on in Bears world right now that cannot be ignored. And it is important to stick around all the way to the end, because this is one of those stories that changes everything you thought you knew about this team's future. We are talking about the safety room, that spot that was absolutely crucial in the success we just lived through in the 2025 season, and that right now is at a critical crossroads. And when I say critical, I am not throwing that word around lightly. NFL insider Jordan Schultz reported this week that the Miami Dolphins have been getting calls on the availability of their star safety, Minkah Fitzpatrick. And as soon as that hit my feed, I could not sit still. Because if there is one name in the NFL that makes any defensive coordinator's face light up, that name is Minkah Fitzpatrick. 5 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pro nods, 8 years in the league as one of the very best at that position. That is not just another guy. That is a franchise piece. Now let me throw something at you and really think about it before you answer. With the Bears sitting at roughly negative $10 million in cap space right now, does it make sense to chase a player who is already under contract for around $18.8 million next season, with an extension projected in the 3-year, $57 million range according to Spotrac? The answer is not as simple as it looks on the surface, and that is exactly what needs to be broken down today. First, let us talk about what Fitzpatrick brings on the field. In that 2025 season, even though the Dolphins were a team in transition and dealing with a ton of issues, Fitzpatrick stayed at an elite level. Per Pro Football Focus, he finished with an overall grade of 81.8, 7th out of 98 graded safeties across the league. In coverage, he posted a 78.3 grade, 9th in the league. Against the run, 79.6, 17th out of 98. In coverage, he only allowed 27 catches for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns all year. That, Bears Nation, is an elite safety playing at a high level even while everything around is falling apart. And here is the thing. When a player can keep that kind of level in the middle of chaos, that tells you everything you need to know about character and professionalism. Fitzpatrick is not the type who taps out when the ship starts sinking, keeps rowing, keeps competing, keeps being the best at that spot. Now, the situation in Miami is pretty clear. With the new regime led by Jeff Hafley and John Eric Sullivan, the Dolphins are in full-blown rebuild mode. They already moved on from Bradley Chubb, from Tyreek Hill, and now they are taking calls on Fitzpatrick. That tells you Miami is willing to sacrifice present-day talent for future capital, and that opens a real window for teams like the Bears that are trying to crank their defense up another notch. But here is where things get tricky, and it is important to keep it honest, because that is what defines this whole conversation. The Bears already have Kevin Byard in free agency, and General Manager Ryan Poles has gone on record saying the goal is to bring Byard back. Byard put together a monster 2025 season, 93 total tackles, 8 passes defended, and 7 picks, the highest interception total in the entire NFL. That earned him a 74.2 PFF grade, 15th out of 98 safeties. Spotrac has Byard projected at a 2-year, $15 million deal on the open market. So here is the question. If the Bears go get Fitzpatrick, what happens with Byard? And what happens with Jaquan Brisker, the other starting safety, who is also hitting free agency? Because this is where salary cap math turns into a giant jigsaw puzzle. To be fair, Brisker had a roller coaster run. In 2024, there were only 5 games played because of 3 concussions, a really scary situation. Then, in 2025, The comeback covered all 17 games with 93 tackles, 8 passes defended, and 1 interception. The problem is that the PFF grades were not pretty. 60.4 overall, 68th out of 98 safeties, and 50.9 in coverage, 76th. Spotrac believes the market will land in the neighborhood of a 3-year, $33 million contract. Right now, Ryan Poles is staring at one of the toughest calls since taking over in Chicago. Bring in Fitzpatrick, and it probably means Brisker walks, and it might even force a tough call on Bayard too. But if Chicago does not chase Fitzpatrick and that player ends up somewhere else in the NFC North, that is going to sting badly. Look at it through the defensive lens. Defensive coordinator Dennis Allen came into Chicago with a very clear philosophy. Wants an aggressive defense that generates turnovers, that is physical, that causes real damage. Fitzpatrick fits that blueprint perfectly. A safety that can play in the box, drop deep, come off the edge on a blitz, and has a nose for the football that very few players at that position have in this entire league. And while the Packers keep building up that defense with young pieces, and the Lions have Kirby Joseph balling out at a crazy level at safety, the Bears simply cannot afford to lag behind. This is a division where every single move matters, and landing a player of Fitzpatrick's caliber would be a loud statement of intent. If the Bears can carve out enough cap room to bring Minkah Fitzpatrick to Chicago, that does not just upgrade the defense short term, it sets a standard of excellence that will raise the bar for every young player on that roster. That is exactly the kind of leadership a team on the rise desperately needs. But the million-dollar question is still hanging out there. Is Ryan Poles willing to make the moves needed to bring Fitzpatrick to Chi-Town? That is something that has to be monitored closely over the next few weeks. And if there is a subscription to this channel locked in, there is going to be front row access to every update. If that caught anyone off guard, just wait for what is next, because the next story is all about the Bears' run game, and there is a name out there right now that has the entire NFL shaking a little. Devon Achane, lock in for this part, because what is about to be laid out is one of those stories that only pop up every once in a long while. And if attention drifts for a second, it is gone. The Miami Dolphins, a team that looks like it is running a full-on clearance sale right now, might be willing to part with one of the most explosive, electric running backs in the entire NFL, Devon Achane. And the Chicago Bears could be perfectly positioned to jump on it. Now, before the comment section starts firing off the takes about how Chicago already had a run game that worked beautifully in 2025, here is the counter. Yes, the team averaged 144.5 rushing yards per game, the third best mark in the league. That is impressive, no doubt about it. But complacency is the enemy of winning big, and if there is a chance to upgrade something that already works, it has to be at least explored. So let us dig into Devon Achane and what this player can actually do on a football field. In that 2025 season, playing on a Miami Dolphins team that was in total chaos mode, Achane still racked up 1,350 rushing yards on 238 carries, averaging 5.7 yards a pop. That is elite production. That is what a true number one back looks like. On top of that, there were 67 receptions on 85 targets for 488 yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. Altogether, there were 12 trips to the end zone on the year. How many running backs in the NFL can do that kind of damage both on the ground and through the air? The list is not long. This is a player who is a threat on every level of the offense. And that makes the matchup almost impossible to defend when everything is clicking. Achane went over 100 yards from scrimmage in 10 of 16 games. 10 out of 16. That means in roughly 62.5% of the games played, there was a dominant factor on offense. There was only one game all year with fewer than 50 rushing yards. That is elite consistency. Now, there is a fair point some people will bring up. Chicago has Kyle Monangai, a physical, punishing back who can carry the load in short yardage and in the red zone. And there is DeAndre Swift, who, even if the future in this roster is up in the air, is still a capable player. All that is true, but here is the key. Monangai and Achane are not mutually exclusive. It is actually the opposite. They fit together almost perfectly. Think about it this way. Ben Johnson, the Bears head coach, already used this exact type of combo back in the Detroit Lions days as offensive coordinator. There was Jahmyr Gibbs, an explosive, lightning-quick back very similar to Achane, and David Montgomery, the power runner. That combination was brutal for opposing defenses because game planning for a single style of run game was impossible. There were two totally different problems to solve, and that opened up lanes all over the field. Now imagine that same philosophy with Achane and Monangai in Chicago. Monangai comes in on short yardage, grinds down linebackers and safeties, and once the defense is worn out and bracing for another power run, Achane checks in with that home run speed and the ability to find space in the open field. That, Bears fans, is a nightmare for defensive coordinators across the league. There is another factor that cannot be ignored: the built-in connection between Achane and the new Bears running backs coordinator, Eric Stoodsville. Stoodsville was the running backs coach in Miami, which means there is already a complete understanding of Achane's game. Knows how to push the right buttons, how to scheme touches, what the strengths and weaknesses are. That existing relationship is a huge plus in making any move to Chicago work smoothly. Now let us talk cost, because this is where the conversation really heats up. Reports are that Miami is asking for a second-round pick in return for Achane. Achane is set to hit free agency in 2027, so this is the best window the Dolphins have to get real value instead of watching a player walk for nothing. Is a second-round pick worth it for a running back of Devon Achane's caliber? The answer here is yes. A second-rounder is a valuable asset. No argument there. But a back who can average 5.7 yards per carry and be a legit threat in the passing game is just as valuable, if not more, depending on the situation. In today's NFL, where a strong run game can be the difference between winning and losing in January, having someone like Achane in the backfield is a massive edge. And here is another piece that has to be part of this. If DeAndre Swift is let go as a cap casualty, Chicago is going to need a quality running back anyway. And if assets are going to be spent at that position, why not swing for the best available option instead of going bargain hunting for a lesser talent? The Bears would be out of their minds not to at least pick up the phone and call Miami about this. The trade market does not wait for anyone, and if some other team jumps in first and lands Achane, this fan base could be talking about that miss for months, wondering why no move was made when the window was open. While the Vikings are still trying to figure things out in their backfield and the Lions already have Gibbs as the main weapon, the Bears have a shot to slam a fist on the table and show that this organization is serious about winning right now. That is what a franchise with a championship mindset does. And the day is not done yet, because the third story in this video centers on a name that is going to make some Bears fans frown right away. But once the arguments are laid out, it becomes pretty clear why it just might make all the sense in the world. Rasul Douglas. So here we are at the third story of the day, at the third. And this is the one that is going to light up the debate. That is obvious. You can feel it. Because as soon as this player's name comes up, the first reaction for a lot of Bears fans is going to be instant rejection. But the ask here is simple. Keep an open mind, because the arguments on the table are solid and they matter a lot for where this team is headed. This is about Rasul Douglas, a veteran cornerback who spent 3 seasons with the Green Bay Packers, the longtime villain in Chi-Town. Yes, that was heard right. A former Packer could be suiting up in navy and orange soon. And before the rage typing starts in the comments, here is why this might actually be one of the smartest moves Ryan Poles could make in this free agency stretch. First, the context. The Bears have Nahshon Wright as the number 2 cornerback, and Wright put together a Pro Bowl season in 2025. That is fantastic. But Spotrac projects Wright to land a 3-year, $50 million contract with an average of $16.7 million per season. That is a big number for a team that is already in the red on the cap sheet. If another team with more breathing room offers a massive deal, the Bears might be forced to let Wright walk. If that happens, There has to be a plan B. There has to be a corner who can play outside, hold up in true one-on-one coverage, and has big game experience. That is where Rasul Douglas steps in. Do you know what Douglas did in the 2025 season with the Miami Dolphins? If not, the numbers might surprise. He signed a one-year deal worth only about $1.5 million. And what he did with that contract was flat out impressive. 62 combined tackles, 13 passes defended, 2 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, 1 forced fumble, and 1 sack in 15 games, starting 13 of those. In coverage, Douglas allowed a completion rate of 54.5% on throws his way, gave up a passer rating of 73.0, and allowed only 3 touchdowns all year. And that was on a Dolphins defense that surrendered the 15th most passing yards per game in the league at 216.4. In other words, Douglas was one of the few bright spots in a secondary that had plenty of issues. Those are not the numbers of a corner who is washed. Those are the numbers of a corner who is still highly competitive at 30 years old. And the best part is, Spotrac has his value pegged at just a one-year $4 million deal. $4 million for that kind of experience and production is an absolute steal. Now let us roll it back to the Packers years, because that is what makes this such a spicy topic for Bears fans. Over 3 seasons in Green Bay, Douglas racked up 32 passes defended and 10 interceptions, 2 of those taken to the house for touchdowns. He allowed a completion percentage of 60.3 and a passer rating of 78.5 when targeted. Those are rock-solid numbers for a corner who played in one of the most competitive divisions in the NFC. The fact that Douglas spent 3 years in the NFC North is actually a huge advantage for Chicago. This is a player who knows the Packers, Vikings, and Lions receivers about as well as any free agent corner out there. Knows how they release, knows their favorite routes, knows their tendencies. That is priceless info that does not cost a dime extra. Douglas already has it built in. Sometimes fan pride gets in the way when talking roster moves. Yes, Douglas wore green and gold. That stings. But in the business side of pro football, the only thing that matters is winning. And if Rasul Douglas can help the Bears win games in the NFC North, then the door at Halas Hall should be open. Think about the likely scenario. If Wright walks in free agency, Chicago needs a number 2 outside corner. The options become either handing that role back to Tyreek Stevenson, who has been up and down, or bringing in a proven veteran like Douglas, who knows exactly what needs to be done on every snap. Which one inspires more confidence for a division race? The answer feels pretty clear. And if Wright does come back to Chicago, Douglas turns into a high-end depth piece who can step in at any time and keep the level of play high. That is roster depth, and depth is what separates playoff teams from the ones sitting at home watching. Defensive coordinator Dennis Allen and defensive backs coach Al Harris are going to want options at corner. Douglas gives them that flexibility at a price that barely dents the cap and with more than enough quality to be a real contributor in this scheme. Forcing turnovers was a core part of what made the 2025 Bears defense so dangerous. Wright played a huge role in that with the coverage work. Douglas, with the interception and pass deflection track record, fits exactly the profile Allen wants at corner. Someone who attacks the ball, does not shy away from contact, and can flip the momentum of a game with one big play. As a final word on this one, Ryan Poles would be wise to at least pick up the phone and talk to Rasul Douglas's agent before free agency officially opens. The price is right, the experience is right, and the play style lines up perfectly with what the Bears' secondary needs. The fact that Douglas once lined up for the Packers should not be a deal-breaker. If anything, it should be extra motivation for Douglas to show that the same player can be just as good, or even better, in navy and orange. Chicago has always been a city that respects hard work, grit, and determination. And Rasul Douglas, with a career built on outplaying expectations everywhere, embodies those values. Bear down and welcome to Chi-Town, Rasul! All right, Bears Nation, we are at the end of this video, and there are a few questions that need answers down in the comments right now. We talked about Minkah Fitzpatrick, one of the best safeties in the NFL over the last 8 years, who might be available on the trade market. The question is this: should Ryan Poles pull the trigger and bring Fitzpatrick to Chicago, even if that means losing Kevin Byard or Jaquan Brisker? Drop that answer in the comments. Every single take on this matters, because this is exactly the kind of decision that is going to shape the future of this franchise. We talked about Devon Achane, that explosive running back who might be packing up and heading from Miami to Chi-Town. Straight up, is a second-round pick worth it to bring Devon Achane to the Bears? Yes or no? And why? The opinion here is already locked in, and it will be good to see if there is agreement or if the fan base sees it another way. And we talked about Rasul Douglas, the former Packer, who could become the new number 2 corner in Chicago. This is the one that is going to spark the biggest argument. Can Bears fans really accept a former Green Bay Packer on this roster if that move makes the defense better? Because in the world of pro football, sometimes pride has to take a back seat so the right decisions can be made. Let it be known in the comments. Now, here is something important. This is not just a Bears news channel. This is a family. This is Bears Nation, united by the love for Navy and Orange, the passion for Chi-Town, and the dream of seeing this team hoist the Lombardi Trophy. And to be part of this family, all that needs to be done is hitting that subscribe button right under the video. If this is the first time on the channel, welcome home. Here there are going to be the most up-to-date Bears stories, the deepest breakdowns, and the most authentic passion out of any Bears channel on YouTube. And if there is already a spot in this family, thanks for sticking around, for every comment, every like, and every time a video gets shared with another Bears fan. Hit like on this video if the belief is that the Bears should go after Minkah Fitzpatrick. Subscribe if there is any feeling that the 2026 season is when the Bears finally make that big leap, and turn on that notification bell so there is always a heads up on every story that is coming in the next few days. Because free agency is about to open, and this is just getting started. Bear down. Chicago, this city deserves a champion, and there will be someone here every single day breaking down how this team is building that road to glory. Much love, Bears Nation. See you next time.